Okay, let's now work on some quick tips so that we will have our best foot forward on using our tools. I'm going to start with dark umber Prismacolor markers. And you'll notice on my Prismacolors that some of them look a little bit different than maybe what you have. Yours probably looks a little more like this. It has this kind of triangle on it. That's okay. Mine are just old. Some of these are my oldest ones. So these are probably about 15 years old. This one's probably about 10 years old, and this is maybe like a year or two old. They've gotten better in explaining a few things about them. So first tip, the triangle points to the smaller nib. So the wide end is the big, the narrow end is the skinny. So that's kind of a visual reference on that. Before that, I had to make little marks to help myself recognize which is which end, because it's very annoying to keep taking your covers on and off to figure that out. Of course, then they went to the bands that were helpful on it. So your markers from your 121 class are going to be not as juicy as your newer markers are. So they're going to blend and bleed a little bit differently. It is expected that they bleed, so don't let that freak you out. Not a big deal. So let me grab my wide end of, who is this, walnut, and draw some straight lines on here. So the easiest way to get those lines straight is your T-square against your edge and your triangle against that. And we're gonna ride across to get some straight lines. So I'm gonna put my marker against the end, and uh-oh, I didn't get a very straight line. Is that a big deal? Nope. I can just go back over it and move over and do the next one. Uh-oh, it happened again. No big deal. I'll just go back over it. Move again and keep on going. Now, as I said, this marker is not as juicy as my other markers, so you get some variation in color on it. I think this is great. So you can see a little bit where I missed here and here, no big deal. I also have a little bit of lightness here, no big deal. It makes it more interesting to see these kinds of breaks in it. Also, you will note there's a little bit of overlap here, and that makes additional lines. That kind of is built-in wood grain for us. So I like having these little lines here, and we expect it to be on rendered work. Remember, we are creating renderings, architectural graphics. We are not creating artwork. Artwork may not want this, but for what we are doing, it helps explain what's happening in it. Now, do I have to use the wide? No. If I'm making wood planks, I may want them skinny. I may want it to look like 1950s kind of boards, and those are always 3 to 3.5 inches. So I may want skinny lines for that. So now, same principle. I'm barely moving it over, but I'm still getting those tiny lines on it. Easiest way to do it, really fast. You just continue to move all the way across on what you're working on. And then you go back and think, oh, well, if I wanted to like add in a shadow or something, then I can add that in afterwards. Also, these are continuing to dry, so the color will change slightly on it. And if you wanted to add maybe a harder edge on this, that you really want to push the story of this being boards, well, you kind of have your built-in lines that tell you where to draw those lines on all of that. So that makes for a really crisp look on this. So this is how we would do a floor plan or an elevation. We would quickly move across with our T-square and our triangle on it. You might notice that the edge of my triangle now has a little bit of ink on it. Easy enough. I can clean it off with sometimes a little bit of water will do it. But if that doesn't do it, your rubbing alcohol does. And that's a nice clean on it. See, that was a lot of ink left on it, and it's still on my alcohol brush. So I want to rub that off. So we can use our rubbing alcohol brushes to activate our colored pencils, but you can also use it to clean that edge, because if you did a bunch of brown and then you went back with cream on this, you're about to get brown all in the nib of your cream marker. And then you're gonna have to blow a lot of ink that's in here to get it cleaned off. So it's better for us to clean that. And you may just have a page in the back that's the clean page that you color and you rub off to get stuff off of your tools. It's better to be proactive with cleaning things off than to start ending up with dirty nibs. I was gonna see if any of these markers had, yeah, see, this one has dirty nib on it because I wasn't as good about that. And so I have to scrub it to clean it back off to get that ink out of there. Otherwise, I'm gonna change what I'm drawing. And having things like this here is interesting. Having this, not interesting. So we have to think about how we're going to use these when we're working with markers. So that's some of my quick tips with markers. When we are face to face, I'll go over a few other things about them, but this is kind of a quick and dirty on that. So I also wanted to show y'all your watercolor pencils. They look just like a pencil. They lay down color just like a pencil. You can do gradations with them like a normal pencil would. You still see that that line of those little bitty lines that make up the paper on it. But when we put our rubbing alcohol on it, we are starting to activate that, and now we can get something more interesting happening. Now, also with this, let me do a couple of other blocks of color to make my point. We're gonna call this one Fill, and we're gonna call this one Flood/Push. So for Fill, I may just want to activate all of my color. So I'm just going over the whole thing and adding that back in. Now, for the Flood/Push, if I start here and move it, ooh, look how much color I'm getting on the other side of that and not leaving much behind. So that's flooding back here, but I have a real hard push color on that side. Now, is one better than the other? No, we have to choose when we're going to use them. So I may want a really hard edge up here, and so I'm gonna push, 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 push till I get to that. So that moves that color up to being kind of inky, and the rest of it is very soft. So that kind of pushes the gradation on it. The Fill just makes my whole color that thing. I may use that and then think, well, I'd kind of like a little bit of purple maybe in on that. So then I can add my purple over it and then add that in, and that works as a color blender on it. And then I clean my my point, because as you can see, my point isn't totally clean on it. It starts to stain after a while. Now, what happens if I put alcohol on marker? Because as you may know, the marker is alcohol based. So it makes a hole, or maybe it blends the colors together. It depends on how you're gonna use it. So let's see, let's add some brown. Let's add some of this kind of mahogany color over it. Let's see what happens. So if I really work this, I can start to fade those together, but I also start to get a hard edge. So now I've got to work the edge. So now I got to keep on working. So now I've kind of faded that out. And I didn't really, now I got a hard edge over here. So it didn't really do as much as you might think it would. But what it did do is lighten up some of the story here. So I could like push the fact that it's light there and add in detail. Maybe I added in some flooring, and I thought, ooh, well, that's kind of dark. I didn't want anything that dark. So I could use my rubbing alcohol, and now I'm just putting in wood grain-ish, and also lifting some of the pigment on it. And it'll continue to dry out. It'll get kind of a little bit of a grainy look, and that's okay. I don't mind a grainy look on it. It is called wood grain. So maybe from that, now I want to add some line into this so that I'm, continuing my wood grain story on it. So I'm just adding in kind of around what I have taken away on it. So now I look a little more like wood grain on it. It doesn't look totally awesome yet. It won't get totally awesome. Now I'm just playing. It won't get totally awesome until I put some hard line on it. So once I start lining this, now it's gonna start looking like something real. Am I using a fancy pen? No, this is a regular pen that I write with that my dog chewed on. So I have smaller points. That's a brush. And I think this is my skinny. I do have the skinnier line that I may want to add in my typical wood grain lines to it that is making this appear to be more like wood grain in what anyone would expect wood grain to be when we are doing that kind of drawing. So this kind of gives you a quick idea on how you use some of your tools with flood and push, fill, a little bit of blend, how we use our tools to make our lines straight and perfect, because sometimes we want perfect, sometimes you don't. How we can use our alcohol pen to change the way things look, to change the way this looks, and how we start using our pens to add in some details on them. When I get to your wood demo, I'm going to go into a step-by-step on how to do that. But this is our individual tools and how we use them. So next one, we'll be talking about woods and marbles and fabrics and how to do each individual one.